I left college to build my construction business 35 years ago. My hands are rough, calloused from years of hard labor. My back aches constantly, a permanent souvenir of the work. And yes, my waistline has expanded a bit over the years. But I built something substantial from the ground up, provided a comfortable life for my family, and never once complained about the 60-hour weeks that made it all possible. My Sarah, 57, wasn't always like this. When we first married, she admired my drive, my ambition. Somewhere around our 15th anniversary, that admiration seemed to curdle. Maybe it coincided with her college friend's rapid career advancement, while her own husband still came home with dirt ingrained under his fingernails. Perhaps it was when her sister married a successful orthodontist. All I know is, the little digs started then. At first, they were almost playful. "Oh, Mark, you've tracked Mudden again." Typical builder. Harmless enough. But slowly, insidiously, they grew sharper, more pointed. 3 years ago, Maya, 32, and Ben, 34, were struggling to find their footing in the insane housing market. I own a rental property, a decent little earner, to be honest. But family comes first, right? So, I offered it to them at significantly less than the going rate. Ben works in tech, something to do with complex computer systems that always makes my eyes glaze over when he tries to explain. Maya does something in marketing. They both earn respectable incomes, yet they always seem to be scraping by. For the past 3 years, they've paid me $1,100 a month for a place that could easily fetch $1,800. And it wasn't just the rent. I was the one fixing every leaky faucet, every temperamental appliance, paying for their streaming services because they conveniently forgot their passwords. Their car insurance had been tacked onto our policy temporarily 3 years ago. And of course, I watched their sweet Lily multiple times a week, for free, pouring my heart into those precious hours. And what did I get in return? A constant drip of disrespect. Last Christmas, Ben asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, if I even knew how to operate a smartphone. I've had the same reliable Samsung for 4 years, running my entire business on it. When I pointed this out, he chuckled and said, "Wow, impressive for someone who still pays with checks at the grocery store." The laughter rippled through the room, but it didn't reach me. Sarah's comments were more insidious, delivered with a veneer of concern at dinner parties. How I embarrassed her in restaurants because I didn't know which fork to use. We grew up working class. Fancy cutlery wasn't exactly a priority. Sorry I missed those etiquette lessons, I'd want to say, but I usually just swallowed it down. Last month, at a family barbecue, I overheard her telling her sister that I was the perfect example of someone who peaked in high school. Apparently, my football and wrestling achievements were now a source of shame. Maya was becoming a carbon copy of her mother. Just last week, I fixed their dishwasher, saving them a costly service call. While I was on my knees, tools scattered around me, Maya started talking to Lily. "This is why we want you to go to college, sweetie, so you don't have to crawl around on floors when you're grandpa's age." I just kept working, the words like tiny barbs under my skin. Then came 2 days ago, the breaking point. I was looking after Lily while they all went off to some wine-tasting event. That little girl, she's the purest joy in that house. The only one whose face lights up genuinely when she sees me. I was holding her after her bottle, just rocking her gently, murmuring silly grandpa things. Nothing out of the ordinary. She got a little fussy, and then, well, the baby threw up. Right down the front of my shirt. Normal baby stuff, right? I smiled at her, told her it was okay, and started to clean us both up. That's when they all trooped back in, earlier than expected. Instead of offering a hand, Sarah looked at me, at the mess, and said those words, the ones that echoed in my head all night. "That baby knows what feels like refuse." My own wife. Maya snorted, a cruel little sound, and added, "She learns fast." Then Ben, ever the comedian, whipped out his phone, snapped that picture, and declared, "That's our family clown right there." Like I was some kind of joke. I didn't react, just kept wiping Lily's face, rocked her until she drifted off, laid her carefully in her crib, and went home. Sarah arrived an hour later, already complaining about something else, completely oblivious to the weight of what had just transpired. That night, sleep eluded me. Their faces, their words, replayed in my mind. The baby knows what feels like refuse. 35 years of marriage. 1 daughter. A granddaughter I adored. And that's how they truly saw me. The family garbage. The family clown. So, yesterday morning, while Sarah was at her yoga class, a sense of cold resolve settled over me. I made some calls. Important calls. Calls that were long, long overdue. What my family didn't understand, in their condescending assumptions, was that while I might not know which fork to use at a fancy dinner, I knew exactly how the money flowed in this family. I knew who paid for what. I knew about Ben's escalating online gambling habit, the one he thought was a secret. He used our home Wi-Fi, and I occasionally checked the router logs, a habit born of a general tech curiosity. I knew about Sarah's hidden credit card, the one teetering on its limit. I knew precisely how financially dependent they all were on good old, dumb Mark. By the time I hung up the last call, a strange calm had washed over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. I went out to the garage, cracked open a beer, and waited for the inevitable storm. This morning, at 6:43 a.m., my phone began its relentless assault. Sarah first, then Maya, then Ben, then Sarah again. 13 calls in total while I sat on my porch, sipping my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky. 13 increasingly desperate voicemails. I still haven't listened to them. You spend decades being someone's doormat, and they forget you have the power to stand up whenever you choose. They were about to remember. Update 1. The outpouring of support has been overwhelming, to say the least. Honestly, waking up to that many notifications was surreal. Some wondered if this was just for online attention. I wish it were. This is, sadly, my reality. As you know, my family mocked me in front of Lily, calling me garbage and the family clown. I made some strategic calls and then ignored their frantic attempts to reach me. So what exactly did I do? Let me lay it out. For years, I've been the family safety net, the financial bedrock. The majority of my income has gone towards propping up people who apparently view me as less valuable than dirt. My initial retirement plan was 3 years away, but that relied on their continued cooperation. The garbage incident accelerated my timeline. My retirement from being their personal ATM started immediately. Remember Ben's gambling? It's far worse than I initially suspected. He's burned through roughly $112,000 in the last 2 years on sports betting apps and online poker. He thinks he's being clever with private browsing, but the router logs tell a different story, as do the increasingly frequent collection notices I've seen mixed in with their mail when I've stopped by to fix things. Maya is completely in the dark. Ben has been intercepting mail and deleting notifications. As for Sarah, my wife of 35 years, her coping mechanism seems to be retail therapy. 3 secret credit cards, their existence revealed when a statement mistakenly arrived at our house instead of her sister's, where she usually has them delivered. She's currently sitting on $42,000 of debt that I was supposedly oblivious to: designer bags, jewelry, clothes, all while lecturing me about budgeting when I need new work boots. My plan wasn't about vengeance, not initially. It was about establishing a new reality. First call, my lawyer. We scheduled a consultation for that afternoon to discuss protecting my assets. Second call, the property management company handling my rental. I informed them to adjust Maya and Ben's rent to the market value of $1,800 a month, effective immediately. Formal notice would be delivered within 48 hours. Third call, my bank. I began the process of separating our joint accounts and securing my savings. Fourth call, my insurance agent. I removed Ben and Maya's vehicles from our policy. Fifth call, my accountant. We discussed restructuring my business to safeguard my retirement funds. By noon, the framework was in place. This wasn't about being vindictive. It was about halting the endless flow of my hard-earned money into hands that clearly didn't appreciate it. Ceasing the financial support of people who saw me as disposable. Then I went home and waited. Sarah returned from yoga around 1 p.m., acting as if nothing had happened, complaining about someone's inappropriate leggings at class. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, offering minimal responses. Then her phone pinged. An email from my lawyer, CC&G me, confirming our appointment to discuss financial restructuring and potential separation of assets. The color drained from her face in seconds. She started with the accusations. What was this about? Was I seeing someone else? Had I lost my mind? My responses were clipped and direct. No, I wasn't having an affair. No, I hadn't lost my mind. In fact, I'd finally found it. She shifted tactics, the anger replaced by a sudden, saccharine sweetness. Suddenly, I was honey and sweetheart instead of family garbage. I just kept eating my sandwich. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a flurry of texts from Maya. The property management company had called to schedule the delivery of the rent increase notice. She demanded to know if it was some kind of mistake. I replied with a single word, "No." 10 minutes later, Ben was calling. I let it go to voicemail. He left 4 messages, each more frantic than the last. In the final one, his voice actually broke as he pleaded with me to at least give them some time to figure things out. By dinner time, Sarah was in full-blown panic. She'd checked our joint accounts and seen that I'd moved the majority of the funds, leaving only enough for regular bills. Tears streamed down her face as she wailed about not understanding what had come over me. I gently reminded her about the garbage comment. She tried to dismiss it as a joke, accusing me of being overly sensitive. That's when I calmly slid the printouts of her secret credit card statements across the table. The look on her face was like she'd seen a ghost. She sank onto a kitchen chair, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, Sarah had absolutely nothing to say. I slept in the spare room that night, not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't bear to be near her. My phone continued its silent vibrations. I finally turned it off. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. We spent 2 hours discussing options. Not necessarily divorce, but certainly robust protection. He advised meticulous documentation, which I'd already begun. Every cutting remark, every instance of financial deception, I was recording it all. I returned home to find Maya sitting in her car in our driveway. Lily was strapped into her car seat in the back. That felt like a low blow, using my granddaughter as emotional leverage. My heart ached at the sight of Lily's innocent face, but then the memory of their laughter while I was covered in baby vomit hardened my resolve. Maya tried the tears first. When that didn't work, she switched to anger. How could I do this to them? They'd never afford the new rent. They'd be forced to move. Did I want my granddaughter living in some dangerous, rundown apartment because her grandfather was having a midlife crisis? I looked her straight in the eye and asked if she knew about Ben's gambling. The shock that registered on her face told me everything. She had no idea. I suggested she ask him about the missing $112,000 before worrying about next month's rent. She drove away in tears, but not before I leaned in to kiss Lily goodbye. That part was truly difficult. Heartbreaking, even. By the end of the week, things had escalated further. Ben showed up at my construction site, creating a public spectacle. He swung wildly between begging and threats, vowing I'd never see Lily again if I didn't back down. I calmly recorded the entire outburst on my phone, just in case. Sarah moved in with her sister temporarily after I remained firm on the financial changes. Before she left, she tried one last manipulative tactic, asking if 35 years of marriage meant nothing to me. I simply echoed her question. It's been 2 weeks now. The formal notices have all been delivered. My lawyer has finalized the legal documents protecting my assets. The property management company confirms that Maya and Ben haven't paid the increased rent. Last night, I was on my deck, enjoying a quiet beer, when a notification popped up. Ben had tagged me in a social media post. That picture of me covered in Lily's throw-up, accompanied by a lengthy, bitter rant about ungrateful boomer parents abandoning their families. It garnered 0 likes and 3 comments urging him to take it down. This morning, I woke up to a text from Maya. Just 2 words. We need to talk. I'm meeting her for coffee tomorrow, without Ben. She says she's found something on their shared computer that I need to see. I don't know what's coming next. Part of me feels a pang of guilt, especially concerning Lily. But you know what eclipses that guilt? Self-respect. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, I'm not a doormat. I'm not refuse. I'm not a clown. I'm simply a man who finally decided his dignity was worth fighting for. Finally, update. Something profound shifts within you when you finally release the need for external validation. It's almost like unlocking a hidden strength. For 6 decades, I'd unconsciously sought to be liked, to be accepted. Now, I sleep soundly. The anxieties that once gnawed at me have quieted. As I last shared, I was about to meet Maya for coffee alone. She'd hinted at a discovery on their computer that I needed to see. That meeting at the local cafe marked not just the beginning of their unraveling, but the true dawn of my own liberation. Maya arrived looking utterly ravaged. Her hair was lank and unwashed, her eyes bloodshot and shadowed, and she wore the same faded college hoodie I'd seen countless times. Her wedding ring was conspicuously absent. Wordlessly, She pushed her laptop across the small table towards me. What I saw on the screen confirmed my deepest suspicions and then plunged into darker territory. Ben's gambling debts weren't the substantial sum I'd uncovered. They were a staggering $112,000. He'd taken out secret loans against their car, maxed out not 3, but 7 credit cards. And then I saw it. The betrayal that truly twisted the knife. He had been systematically borrowing from Lily's college fund, the one her great-grandparents had so lovingly established. But the financial wreckage wasn't the full extent of his deceit. There were emails stretching back 18 months to a woman named Dolores. They were explicit, detailed, filled with the mundane logistics of their clandestine meetings, hotel receipts, pictures I instantly wished I could erase from my memory. The sickening irony? Ben had apparently been using my Wi-Fi network to send these emails whenever they visited. In my own home, while I was fixing their broken garbage disposal or holding their precious daughter for free. Maya wasn't crying. She was beyond tears, her face a mask of stunned disbelief. She simply looked at me, her voice barely a whisper, and asked if she and Lily could stay with me, just temporarily. I agreed, but with a crucial condition. This wasn't going to be another instance of Dad fixes everything. What I didn't tell her then was the extent of what I had already set in motion. Remember those initial calls? After my meeting with the lawyer, I had indeed moved 90% of my assets into protected accounts and trusts, but I'd also made some other, perhaps more impactful, calls. To Ben's parents, to his direct supervisor at work, to the organizer of his Thursday night poker game. I laid it all bare, the gambling debts, the lies, everything, with documented proof. His parents were devastated, their disappointment palpable. His boss expressed serious concerns about Ben's judgment and reliability. The poker buddies, well, they have their own code. Word travels fast in those circles. Ben was swiftly and unceremoniously kicked out of their game. All of this unfolded within a dizzying 48 hours. I also meticulously compiled every nasty text message, every cutting email, every demeaning comment my family had directed at me over the years. Screenshots, recordings, the whole damning collection. I created a shared folder and sent it to Sarah's sister, her parents, and her closest friends, along with a simple, stark message. This is how my family has treated me for years. Now I'm done. The responses were immediate and visceral. Sarah's sister called her in disgust. Her mother expressed profound shame. Her best friend since college said she didn't recognize the person depicted in those messages. By the end of that week, Sarah found herself with nowhere to go. Her sister had asked her to leave. She called me 13 more times, each voicemail laced with increasing desperation and self-pity. Good. Meanwhile, Ben was spiraling spectacularly. His friend Xavier, with whom he'd been crashing, kicked him out after just 3 days when Ben couldn't even contribute towards groceries or beer. He had no family willing to take him in, no friends left who hadn't heard the whispers of his gambling and deceit. His credit cards were maxed, his accounts empty. He showed up at my house late one night, pounding on the door, clearly intoxicated. He started yelling about needing to see his daughter. I didn't even open the door. I simply used my new security app to call the police and recorded his entire meltdown on my doorbell camera. They found cocaine in his car during the arrest. Not my problem. Maya filed for an emergency restraining order and temporary full custody of Lily the very next day. 2 weeks into this new reality, Sarah finally cornered me at the grocery store. She followed me through the produce section, her voice a choked whisper, begging for just 5 minutes to explain. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and said, "Go ahead." She dissolved into tears right there between the apples and the zucchini, a public spectacle. She spewed all the predictable apologies. She was sorry. She'd been awful. She didn't know why she'd acted that way. She'd change. The usual empty promises. I just looked at her, my gaze steady, and asked if she remembered calling me refuse in front of our granddaughter. Asked if she remembered laughing while Ben took that photo. Asked if she remembered 35 years of 1,000 tiny cuts. Then I paid for my groceries and walked away, leaving her standing there, sobbing. I later heard that 3 different people had recorded the scene on their phones, and it was circulating on local social media by dinner time. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did a small, vindictive part of me find it satisfying? You bet your calloused hands it did. A month in, the real consequences began to bite. The property management company initiated eviction proceedings against Maya and Ben after they missed the second rent payment. Their credit scores plummeted. Ben couldn't even get approved for a tiny studio apartment in the worst part of town. Sarah discovered the harsh reality of living on her own meager income. Her expensive yoga studio membership? Canceled. Her weekly salon appointments? Gone. Her luxury SUV? Repossessed. At 57, she had to find a roommate just to make ends meet and started working extra shifts at a retail job she'd always looked down on. For the first time in their adult lives, they were experiencing the unbuffered reality of the world without Heath's, my given name, which felt foreign on my own tongue these days, safety net. Maya, however, was the unexpected point of light in this darkness. She got a second job, started attending therapy, and filed for divorce from Ben. She even cut up her credit cards, a tangible symbol of her changing approach. When she tentatively tried to thank me for letting her and Lily stay, I reminded her it wasn't charity. She was paying a reduced rent and actively contributing to household chores. No more freeloading. 3 months after the incident in the living room, I agreed to a meeting. All of them. My house. My terms. They arrived looking like faded versions of their former selves. Sarah had gained weight, and her usually meticulously colored hair was streaked with gray. Ben had lost a noticeable amount of weight and couldn't sit still, his anxiety radiating off him in waves. Maya stood slightly apart, a fragile but determined figure. I laid out my conditions, my voice calm and firm. I would consider helping Maya and Lily get back on their feet, but with a formal repayment plan for any financial assistance. Ben would need to complete a comprehensive gambling addiction treatment program, secure stable employment, and consistently pay child support before even considering unsupervised visits with Lily. Sarah and I would remain separated. Any possibility of reconciliation would require intensive couples therapy, a legally binding post-nuptial agreement outlining completely separate finances indefinitely, and, most importantly, an absolute and unwavering commitment to mutual respect. One more instance of disrespect from any of them, and they would be permanently out of my life. There were tears, desperate arguments, pleading, but in the end, they all agreed. Not because they suddenly saw the light, but because they had no other viable options. 6 months have passed since that tense meeting. Where are we now? Maya and Lily moved into a small, affordable apartment last month. She's managing on her own with minimal financial help from me. Just occasional babysitting and a small loan that she's diligently repaying on schedule. Ben completed 30 days of inpatient treatment and found a job delivering packages. He sees Lily twice a week under Maya's supervision. He still looks at me with a mixture of fear and resentment, as if I might end his existence with a single phone call. Good. Sarah and I have attended exactly 6 counseling sessions. Progress is glacial. We are not living together, and honestly, I'm not sure we ever will again. The counselor gently points out my unresolved anger. No kidding. Yesterday was Lily's first birthday. A small, quiet celebration at Maya's new place. Everyone was on their absolute best behavior. No snarky remarks, no eye-rolling, just awkward politeness and a palpable, genuine love for that little girl. At one point, I was holding Lily when she, in a delightful repeat of history, threw up on my shirt again. The room went utterly silent. Everyone froze, their eyes darting between me and the baby. I smiled down at Lily, told her it was perfectly all right, and started cleaning us both up. Not a single word was uttered by the other 3. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. That's when I looked up at all of them, my family, who for so long had treated me like I was less than, and said, my voice calm but carrying, "Anyone want to make a comment about this? Anyone at all?" They all stared at the floor. Ben literally took a step backward. Sarah busied herself with a stray napkin. Maya shook her head quickly. In that moment, I knew. I had won. Completely and totally. Is this the end of the story? Hell no. Families are complicated, and the scars run deep. But the old, toxic dynamic is dead, buried under the weight of their consequences. My family now understands a fundamental truth, etched in the stark reality of their changed circumstances. I am not to be taken for granted. I am not an endless source of money. I am not a punchline. Sometimes, the most potent form of retribution isn't some elaborate, vengeful scheme. It's simply allowing people to face the direct impact of their choices while you observe from a safe distance. With a cold beer in hand and a fully funded retirement account they can't touch,